I mean, we have full windows on here, so why not use the timer app built into it? I finally got my hands on the brand new gaming product from ASUS, a very exciting handheld that does spark a lot of conversations around comparisons to similar handhelds, one in particular. But for now, why don't we just get this thing powered up and enjoy some games right away. Hey, it's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? Here is the ASUS ROG Ally, day one. Now, as you might expect with a powerful handheld like this that is actually running a full version of Windows 11, there's going to be quite a bit of setup in the initial process. And that's going to entail a few different things. Obviously unboxing it, which you're seeing right now, but also right after unboxing and powering on the ROG Ally for the first time, it's a matter of actually downloading the various games and applications actually that I might want to use on this handheld. And that meant that most of the first evening of using the ROG Ally was actually spent just downloading all of my games, or at least a few of the key ones that I wanted to play right away on the go. So it's no surprise that the first evening was actually spent just waiting for all of these games to download, and I was really happy to finally get into my office this morning so that I could actually download at high speeds various games like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is over 100 gigs using my fiber internet. And just like with any Windows PC, that amount of time that you're waiting for everything to download gives you a chance to actually enjoy or appreciate some of the aesthetics around the hardware itself. And maybe this is just the gamer in me, but the moment I took the ROG Ally out of its box, I was pretty hooked just by its looks. Leave it to ASUS, or ROG in particular, to make sure that everything about the Ally really screams gamer. After all, this is supposed to be the Republic of Gamers. And as you saw at the beginning of this video, I already got the official case that will protect and also make the ROG Ally a little bit more travel friendly. And as you can see around it, you have the logo here, and all around the zippered area it says Republic of Gamers. Stylish, definitely. As far as the controls are concerned, it's almost like taking an Xbox style controller and just molding it into something resembling a Nintendo Switch. The shoulder buttons and the triggers all feel really nice, especially the fact that the triggers are analog style. There are also these two buttons on the back that can be programmed for any number of things, so you have a little bit of extra input for various games. All the face controls are exactly what you would expect for PC gaming. I will admit that for the face buttons, I was pressing a couple of things incorrectly because I've been playing way too much Tears of the Kingdom lately on my Switch. You have what is basically a start button and a select button or a share button over here on the left, and underneath the share button is a quick command center button that gets you to a bunch of different settings so that you don't have to exit any of your games or any of your apps. And then over on the right side, underneath that start button, is the button to get you to and from Armory Crate. The Armory Crate software, Armory Crate SE it is called, is what is going to consolidate all of your games and applications that it will be able to just render out with some information and some cover art and whatnot to put everything in one place. But if you press that button one more time, you get back to full Windows. To be fair, ASUS tries to make things a little bit easier via Armory Crate by heading over to the content area where you have access to a number of different settings, which we'll get into later, but mainly we have this game platforms area where that shows you the various launchers that you might want to install, from Steam to Epic Games to Xbox. But if you want to install anything that's not already listed on here, you would have to go into the Windows apparatus and just go into an Edge browser or any browser that you want, use this as a regular computer, and download those apps yourself. And again, this is full-on Windows 11, so you can go into the Windows Store and just download a bunch of apps from that particular store in case there are some things there that you want to install on here. And the touchscreen worked fine enough. I was able to get around pretty effectively. You do have to rely basically on the touchscreen to actually type things in using the virtual keyboard, but this is basically a miniaturized PC, so you can always just connect mice and keyboard to it via Bluetooth or via the connections at the top. Which brings us to the top, where we have the power button here, and you already saw me power on the ROG Ally earlier in the video, but what is also nice is that this power button also has an integrated fingerprint reader. Moving along, we have the volume rocker, and then the XG mobile docking port, which is where you would connect ROG's proprietary external GPU, the XG Mobile. I don't have one. I'm kind of thinking of getting one, but at the very least, one of the connectors here is for USB-C, where you would connect the 65-watt charger that's included. And if you do want to connect this to maybe a dock that you have or any other monitor that supports USB-C DisplayPort out, well, this is where you would do it all. Finally, we have up here an SD card slot and a headphone jack, and that pretty much does it for all of the ports and buttons. They're all on the top here, which would make playing this thing plugged in pretty easy. Finally, on the back here, we have a couple of fans, and obviously you're going to be hearing them when you're playing high-powered games, especially at higher wattages in the TDP. So this is just going to be where you'll be feeling some of that heat here at the top, because that's where the air is coming out. One thing I really applaud ASUS for across all of their devices is the attention to detail. There's just a lot of style in the ROG Ally, especially when compared to the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck seems a little bit more function over form rather than this one actually trying to find a way to balance the two. Stylish and really easy on the eyes, and if you're a gamer and you're into the whole RGB everything, well, you have RGB lights right here in these rings underneath the analog sticks. Alright, well the tea is done steeping, and this one is actually a very interesting discovery. Oops, spilled some already. Are there any boba lovers out there? Let me know in the comments. And also, what's going on everybody? Let me know how you're doing in the comments. I don't hate boba, it's just that I can't really have any of those drinks anymore on account of my type 2 diabetes. That's why this was such an interesting find. This is from a company called Pinky Up, and it's black tea, but it is also sweetened with monk fruit, which is diabetic friendly, and it has these hints that make it tastes a lot like the brown sugar boba that has really taken the world by storm, that tiger sugar and all that stuff. So this is very similar to that. If you look really closely in the bag of tea here, there are actual tapioca pearls in here trying to impart some of that flavor, even though you're not actually going to be chewing on those pearls. So it's an interesting way of getting that same kind of flavor, just in a different method, which I think dovetails pretty nicely into the ROG Ally, because it's a way of actually playing all of the PC games that you would like at a desk or on a big TV, just in a different fashion, and in a way that is actually just as enjoyable, if not even more enjoyable, because it's on the go. So while we take a breather, that's the reminder I wanted to give all of you. A lot of the things that we want to do, or maybe enjoy, don't necessarily all have to be done one way. Remaining adaptable and, let's say, fluid to the various methodologies that are presented to us just makes life a little bit easier to handle. And even if things don't go exactly the way that we expect, chances are life will remain just as enjoyable and we'll be able to do just as much. It can be as enjoyable as learning how to play a lot of different games on a different peripheral rather than just being at our desk all the time, or in the case of my actual life and health, I've had to change up the way that I approach food and the rest of my life because of my type 2 diabetes. Once again, let me know what's going on everybody in the comments down below, and maybe tell me about a time when you needed to be versatile and change a few things up to get the same tasks or enjoyment done. I hope you enjoyed this little breather in this tea break, because I hope you come for the tech, but you stay for the tea. Alright, we're finally ready to get some gaming done on here, so let's get started. And by the way, comparisons to the Steam Deck are inevitable, but I'm not really going to do that in this day one. I'm just talking about my first impressions of the ROG Ally after buying it myself. For future videos, maybe in about a week or two, when I actually use this more and more in comparison to the Steam Deck, we'll get into that talk at that point. You can actually install SteamOS on here, but you know what? Having Steam on here and turning on big picture mode, that's plenty already. So why don't we go ahead and get into a little bit of gaming. I'm actually going to start off with the first game I really wanted to play on here, and that is of course Street Fighter 6. Now, I'm a huge Street Fighter fan. I played Street Fighter 4 a ton, and you can see that Street Fighter 2 is right behind me in the cabinet in the background, so Street Fighter 6 was a very exciting release.
I'm ready for a fight when it's on, it's on. I'm charging like a bull when it's on, it's on.
I did a little bit of testing on this particular game on the ROG Ally last night, which is to say, I played for quite a bit. Much like any gaming PC, there's a lot of tinkering that needs to be done in order to get it to optimal settings. You have to find the balance between resolution for good visuals and of course smooth gameplay. I'm pretty happy to keep the screen at 1080p resolution and 120Hz refresh rate, basically maxing it out, and then leaving it at performance mode for Street Fighter 6 as long as in the game I have it set up so that it is actually outputting 720p resolution and is still at 60 frames per second for the gameplay. That way it reduces certain things like screen tearing or anything like that. After all, there is a variable refresh rate on this screen, and then at 720p resolution, I mean, that's still more than enough for the size of the screen that this is as far as just enjoying the gameplay. And I'm not even playing online, I'm just doing the arcade modes for now to get used to Jamie. One thing to note is that after about an hour of gaming, I am down to 19% in the battery life. So, especially in the performance mode and playing as relentlessly as I was, you're obviously not going to get the best battery life out of the ROG Ally. And speaking of the screen, this is a very lovely display on here. It gets up to 500 nits of brightness, but I have not played it like outside, nor do I really think I would for the most part. As portable as this might be, it's not as if I'm going to be playing it like in a park or anything like that. Just like with the the Steam Deck, what I'm planning on doing most with this is maybe playing it on a plane where I can still plug into like a 100-watt power bank, and then when I'm at home, it's going to be my way of playing all of these games while lying down. It's just the most comfortable gaming experience that I could possibly have. Let's jump into another recent game, and that would be Jedi Survivor. Oh, gotta restart the ROG Ally to finish Insta. Alright, fine. So, keeping things at 1080p at 120 Hz, I'm actually going to go into the turbo mode for now. Let's go ahead and just drain this battery for this day one. With the various things that I was trying with those particular games, I would say I got about 90 minutes out of the ROG Ally, jumping between performance and turbo mode. Okay, so Jedi Survivor is not the most optimized game. It's a beast of a game, let's put it that way too. So when in the turbo mode, I still had to put everything down to the low settings and turn off various things like the ray tracing, the film grain, and the motion blur. A lot of settings had to be turned off in order to get fairly smooth gameplay. And even then, at 720p resolution, I was getting comfortably above 30 frames per second, maybe around the 40 to 45 mark, but it certainly wasn't getting all the way to 60. That being said, the gameplay was smooth enough that I could find myself playing this game from start to finish on the ROG Ally itself. But now we're going to get into one final game, and I think it's one of the main reasons why I'm actually really excited to use the ROG Ally as opposed to my Steam Deck, and that's because you're not just limited to Steam. After all, when you get over to the game library, you'll see there are a bunch of different launchers for a bunch of different games and different game markets. And Xbox is one of them. This is particularly exciting because one of the things I did on the Steam Deck was actually buy a couple of games that I originally had on the Xbox Game Pass, but I wanted to play handheld. It just wasn't really possible on the Steam Deck, at least not easily. Now, on the ROG Ally, I can get into a game like Yakuza Like a Dragon and finally finish this game via the Ally.
痛い目に合わせますよ。わかりませんよ。
Alright, before I go way too far into this game and end up recording my entire SD card out of oblivion, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. This is a great way of playing a bunch of different games on the go, and as long as you kind of temper your expectations as to what kind of fidelity and what kind of performance you're going to get out of particular titles, the ROG Ally is just a really fun time. It's probably no surprise that Yakuza Like a Dragon worked really well on here. I was able to get 1080p resolution at medium graphics settings with a pretty comfortable frame rate that wasn't necessarily 60, but it was definitely more than enough for this type of RPG. If I were to set everything to low, I would probably get an even better frame rate, but overall, I would have an enjoyable time playing that game and finally finishing it on here. And so, there you have it, the ROG Ally. It's a great time, honestly, and I think it's a great alternative to the Steam Deck and a lot of these other handheld PCs or handheld consoles that have been coming out lately. You gotta give it up to ASUS that they were able to put pretty much all of the specs that you would need, at least right now, to play current AAA titles, but of course, you can put a ton of other stuff on here, like emulation and a lot of indie games. Pretty much anything on here is going to run pretty well, and if you get into the AAA titles, you just have to temper your expectations, like I said before. I ended up going pretty long-winded for this day one because I was really excited to get at the ROG Ally, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to using it a lot for particular games that I have been obsessed with lately, like Street Fighter 6. But it's also going to be a really great way for me to finally finish a few games, and you can see them right on here, Yakuza Like a Dragon and Cyberpunk 2077 in particular. Look forward to more coverage on the ROG Ally as I start to compare it to the Steam Deck, which I have used for quite some time by now, and also, I wouldn't mind trying this thing out in a docked mode, playing games on monitors and TVs, using various docks, and maybe even using this as an actual PC to get some work done. But with all that said, I'm gonna go ahead and call it on this day one video on the ROG Ally. Thank you so much for hanging out with me again today. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.